I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Start tonight with any review or additions to tonight's agenda. Seeing none, we'll move to public input. Seeing none, I will close public input. We'll have a second public input session before we adjourn this evening, so anyone watching, feel free and come join us at Town Hall. Next we have correspondence. Thank you to Ms. Stevens for putting this together. Quick summary of our correspondence since our last meeting, not a lot. On April 29th, Recording Secretary Matthew Sullivan shared the draft April 25th meeting minutes. On May 1st, School Board Rep Andrew Cutter notified the committee of a meeting with the LMS Solar Company scheduled for May 14th. He requested the committee send any questions they may have for the company so he can ask and report back. On May 7th, Chair Sun reminded the committee to forward any solar questions to Mr. Cutter before May 10th. On May 9th, Town Administrator Kim Kleiner shared a breakdown of funding for the new pickleball courts at Sawmill Park. A total of $122,000 was encumbered from impact fees for the project, and it came in under budget by $339. On May 13th, Chair Sun shared the May 23rd meeting agenda, and then on May 21st, Mr. Cutter shared the May 15th BA report. That is our correspondence. Next, we have review and acceptance of minutes, and that's from our April 25th meeting. Everyone had an opportunity to review those. I have a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion from Mr. Burke. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second from Ms. Douglas. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
2 abstentions, so motion carries 7. I think you abstained as well, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, 7-0-2. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Town business. Mr. Leary.
I can find my notes. We've started interviewing for the building inspectors. Hope to have that done and maybe have somebody in place by July 1st is the plan for now. At least that's what we're shooting for. Well, that's really not a lot going on. We finalized the budget, our budget process that we're going to use. Fee changes as far as building fees and things like that. We've finished that up. Just a lot of things that have been sitting out there for a while that we're trying to tidy up. And I'm looking through my notes so I can find it because I don't have my scribbles. So the 4th of July parade, we've approved that with certain conditions to be met by the people hosting the parade. We formally accepted Veterans Park. We approved the bylaws, which finally the selectmen didn't have bylaws, now they do. And then we approved the contract with George Sansucci, who's going to assess all of the town's infrastructure, water lines, power lines, etc. So we can get a head start on that. As everybody knows, we've been talking about possibly purchasing our own water. Due to the very exorbitant rates that Pennachuck has been charging us. And we've been talking with the folks that did it for Hudson a few years back. The same exact cast of characters. The important part about it, what we really like about it is that since Hudson purchased theirs, they have not had a water increase in over 20 years. They have voted at warrant to do some infrastructure changes or upgrades, but as far as the water rates go, the water rates have stayed steady for 20 years, over 20 years now. So that's a big one that we're kind of working on right now. And the town website, the new town website should be up and running fairly soon. They're, I think they're having a workshop this week for it. And don't ask me questions about that because I know nothing about that stuff.
I was getting ready to ask you one, but I'll save it for Ms.
I'll refer
Kleiner.
you to Kim.
Yeah, I was going to ask Ms. Kleiner, and I'll email her because I guess my assumption is the portal that we've been using will be replaced by the website, but I don't, and if so, like, well, we'll probably want to have a conversation about like how we manage internal
Sure.
content on that.
Yep.
Yes.
Questions for Mr. Leary?
Actually, just have two quick things.
Yep.
One, it's nice to see, Bob, that fence was finally erected by Eversource
Oh, yeah. I get good reviews from the neighborhood over there, so.
compared to what it looked like.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. The other question I had is Dalton. Are they going to leave their plows at the fire department all year? And if so, do we charge them rent
Here at the
That's-
old fire station. Here.
at the new fire station?
That's a very good question. Let me get an answer for you
It's got
on
like
that.
4 of them over there right
They
now.
used to
Is
leave
there?
them at the school too. Did the school charge them rent?
I don't know. I mean, there's maybe a good use for the old fire department parking lot.
It's also advertising for a local company, so there's that.
Yeah, I don't know, I can find out.
I mean, if that's the case, then, everyone in town should be able to park there.
That would be the thought, yeah.
Yeah.
If you do it for one, you do it for everyone.
But aren't they the ones that service the house? I worry that we're getting to like
They're
nitpicking,
yeah.
so whatever, you guys talk to him, but
I'll get him an answer. He want, I think it's a legit question.
Additional questions for Mr. Leary?
Yeah, not anything that I expect you to answer, Bob, but in taking a look at that first quarter comparison that Heather sent over,
Yep,
can we get some sort of a description or information about the drastic differences? So like, for example, if you take a look at PD seminars and conventions, 2023 first quarter, $1,684. 2024, $323,041.
What line, what?
That
what
is going to
line
be on line 180
Thank you.
of that spreadsheet. And then there's some other ones as well. The fire department retirement is much higher than it was in 2023. I'm not worried about the, few thousand here, few thousand there. A bill may
Yes.
slip into Q2 or something like that, but those huge numbers, can we just get just make me feel better?
so for the PD seminars, and what's the other one?
So firefighter retirement was another one. Let me give you the
Okay,
line item for
she'll
that
know
one.
what it is.
Pretty much, I would say anything that is over, 50,000.
Any lines over 50,000?
No, I mean, the good thing is we saw salt go down 50,000, so I'll take those ones.
Yep.
And then I think there was one more down towards the bottom. Oh, Memorial Day general supplies. 2023, $0.
Yep.
2024, $113,548.
There's gonna be some key.
Yeah, it seems like a mistake.
There's gotta be some, yeah.
That one there's on line.
That's a lot of
That's
flags.
a lot of flags.
Line 377. Now, I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the veterans where we had to pay for stuff and then the veterans
Oh,
paid us back or something? I don't know,
That was
but,
completely paid for. That was completely paid for by the veterans.
okay.
Could that be the? I don't know. I was going to say anything to do with the acceptance of the park.
The
but
gift,
there was
yeah.
no funds exchanged there, though.
But he's talking about an expenditure. not
Right,
a-
right. Yeah, the PD and convention ones is a big one. Like that's a $300K difference, and I'd be curious, like how it would even be possible to spend $300K.
Well, town hall would have been closed the whole first quarter. If they
Right.
went to
Yeah.
that many seminars.
Yeah, that seems like more of just maybe there was a clerical error somewhere.
I'm emailing her right
Good questions. Any other questions for Mr. Leary?
now. You said PD was how much? 100 something
It's a
thousand?
323,000.
It was
323.
321K jump.
I just had a question about the water study.
Yep,
Do you know how much, so the rate hasn't increased. Is there a certain part of the Hudson Town budget that goes to pay for the water system? Like, is it just that the people are paying through taxes instead
the
of?
I believe now the bond is paid off.
Okay, it was, yeah, not something that I expect you to answer now, but.
Yep, yep.
But, when we're looking at cost differences,
Yep.
I'm just curious is the water bill the only thing they're paying, or is there somewhere in the town budget that's
Like they had to
also
expand
covering?
like DPW or something. or-
Right,
Yeah,
As far
your
as
wages
I
don't
know,
have
it
to go
pays
up
for
or something.
everything. The
Yeah.
water rates pay for everything over there.
okay.
They also have a lot more business to help.
Correct. I was just going to make a comment about, you mentioned the Veterans Park. I had an opportunity to attend that ceremony. I thought that was just was a great turnout from the town. It was a great, you know, you had the school represented with, the band. You had just, it was a beautiful facility, beautiful day, and just a great turnout. And I think the veterans group should be applauded for the work they did there, because it's really impressive.
It was a long process, but
Yes,
Anything
it's
else
really
on the
nice.
town side? All right, school, Mr. Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was not able to attend the April Budget Committee meeting. Mr. Plansky sat in on that meeting. That being said, I did receive feedback that there was conversation about the new superintendent and inviting him to talk to the Budget Committee and start to build that relationship as we think about budget seasons. I did have many conversations with the superintendent at this point, and he is planning to join the June 27th meeting of the Budget Committee, just as a heads up there.
And that, just a question on that, like, that's just an introduction.
Introductions, nothing formal being presented.
Yep.
He hasn't even started with the district yet.
Right.
Let's just be
July,
sensitive to that.
July 1 is this.
Correct, and I can tell you he's been actively involved over the past several weeks with interviews and some hiring decisions, so.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. In addition to that, speaking of positions, we do continue to have a large number of open positions. At count today, we had 25 plus. I think while they're all critically important, several of them have been open for quite a while and we're trying to actively fill. A couple to bring to the board's attention that are changing as well. We did hire a new curriculum director, which we're excited about. In addition to that, the business administration position is open, as well as our special services director position is open as well going into next year. So, the business administration position we're continuing to interview. We have not found any candidates at this point for that particular role. So I don't know kind of what the direction of the board will be at this point, but that's definitely, it's starting to be a concern of mine, especially as we think about budget season and what that might look like. There are contracted services out there, similar to the town and what you've used for the police chief, right?
MRI, yeah.
MRI, we can do the same for the school, not ideal, right, but it's an option. Additionally, we can reach out to, maybe retired business administrators to see if they can fill the gap while we're trying to find the right individual. Anyway, there are options there, just putting it on the radar of the board. Enrollment, so just a quick update on enrollment. The board does monitor enrollment very closely. At this point, we have 1,181 students in the buildings. We started the year at 1,178. It's gone up and down, a few students here and there throughout the year. I think interestingly, with the last report in April, we are starting to see some new students as a result of the new development on the north side of town, and we'll continue to watch that closely. I do have at least a basic understanding of the 102 development, which is the one we're watching closely because it's 170 units. That is slated to begin opening in September for rental, right? And so that's right at the beginning of our school year. Obviously, we want to watch that closely. In addition to that, one of the metrics or one of the measures that we always look at and watch this time of year is kindergarten registrations. At this point, there are 73 registrants for kindergarten of next year.
So the trigger for the fifth teacher?
It's close to that. Yeah,
Well, it
I
all
have to
depends on, really. The school's trigger, but whether that's a reasonable trigger should be another discussion.
How does the 73 compare to last year?
We currently have 83 kiddos in kindergarten at the moment, but registration's still open. There's always last minute. Again, people move to town over the summer, whatever it might be.
How many do you have for the 83?
We have 5 this
You
year.
have 5 for the 83.
Yeah.
Yeah, that class size, I don't know, I know it's under 20, is the,
I think it's 16.
was 16?
I think so.
Yeah, it's
I knew it was under 20, I didn't know what it was.
PKK. The trigger is 16.6. So 16.
The trigger or the current amount? Because one of the reports I saw come over had 77 as the trigger for a fifth, which is 19 students.
No, it's 16.
So how many classes are you guys short currently at GMS?
How many classes are
Well,
we short?
I was watching the board, the meeting about the interesting proposal of relocating pre-K as a result of a shortage in classrooms. How many classrooms are we short?
We're not short.
Then why are we talking about relocating pre-K?
We're trying to prepare in the event that there is a capacity issue as a result of an influx of students.
All right, so this is where I'm saying that in the past, there was a lot more flexibility with classroom sizes.
It
I'm
could,
sure
it
a
could
lot
be.
of us would recall that we had classes, instead of like, absolutely 20, well, 22 is okay. Kindergarten,
I think-
19, well, it's really 19.25 is what was projected, so maybe 20.
It's been the same, Gary, for the last 12 years.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
because
except for the only thing that changed, and I'm the one who pushed for it, was the trigger had to be like 3/4. So if you needed 20,
Right,
you had to have 20 in, say, 3 of the 4 classes.
okay.
So it's more, it's not
That's
less.
not what's currently sent over. What's currently sent over is for, when I searched my email for the most recent enrollment report that came through, pretty sure it said kindergarten was 77.
So allow me to clarify.
Which is 19. We were proposed, if we got into 20, we would have, at 4 classes, you'd have 19.25.
So allow me to clarify, right?
That just reduces stress.
There's another tab here that details this out. So
Mhm.
in kindergarten, we are not to exceed 19.
Well, strive to not to exceed.
We strive for an average of 18. We are not to exceed
Yeah, it's 18.
board policy at 19.
Right, board policy,
Thank
but that
you.
doesn't mean you can't go over it, because we've done it in the past.
They're
If
required
the
change in
choice
policy.
is relocating an entire population because we're tight on room and adding a couple of kids and reconsidering choices we made, we might have to reconsider choices we made.
I just remind the board for a moment that
It's budgetary.
we have, as a board, have already planned for this.
Okay.
We already have a separate kindergarten or teacher account
Yeah.
in the event we need this extra teacher.
Yes, but the idea of relocating an entire population to the high school has a lot of fit-out costs that are not.
Can we not talk about that? Because quite frankly, it's not an idea that the board has even discussed, debated, or decided upon.
Oh,
So it's
really? And then what was the
Let's
school
move
board
on.
meeting that I watched where it was
Let's-
discussed and debated?
They
So
discussed it,
please,
but let's
it
move on.
has been out there.
Gary, you may want to go to a school board meeting to voice your concerns.
Well, this is absolutely financial impact. This is,
There-
It's not a
There's no-
financial
there's no
impact because
financial
there's no
impact.
decisions made.
Let's move on.
However,
There
Dr.
are potential financial impacts. I do think that part of moving the preschool is you have portables that are out there and you have people that are on carts. So I think part of that's taken into consideration. What I will say is there's a lot of discussion in that meeting. There were differing of opinions of people that brought ideas to the table. And I think what I heard was the school board had more work to do to figure out what it was going to look like. And I think until they have a better idea of what that plan's going to be, I don't.
so the problem I have with this is if we require encumbering funds, you're gonna have to do that prior to the next time we meet because you're gonna be out of time. So the reality is, it is just because you guys are late to the board to have the discussion, doesn't mean the taxpayers don't have a right to be involved in it. So,
You are involved in it. It's a
yeah,
public
you just
meeting.
told me I can't have a conversation about it, and I damn well can, because it has to do with
So
money.
come to the school board meeting and have it in public comment, Gary. It's not appropriate for budget committee. There's no
It's
budget
not-
impact. at
So
the
there's
moment.
no appropriate discussion for a budgetary impact at a budget committee meeting.
There's no budget impact because no decisions have been made. We haven't even had a solidified idea presented to the
There's a
board yet.
potential for an impact.
Well, it affects encumbrances and the amount of money that will be returned to the taxpayers. So please don't insult either of our intelligences by saying that we can't discuss potential budget issues at a budget committee meeting.
All right, Carrie, you know what?
Wait,
You're
move it.
right. You figured me out.
Moving
Sorry.
on. Moving on. No
Well
matter
done.
no matter what they decide to do, the idea of trying to do a project in that short of a window, I think would be very aggressive. And I think let's just move on. Any other updates, Mr. Cutter?
Oh, sure. Yes, lots of updates.
I have lots of questions.
Great. LMS Solar, is that one of your questions?
No, because I kind of gave up on that one. Go ahead.
Do you want an update?
I absolutely do.
Would the budget committee like an update in LMS Solar? I'll put you-
Sure.
put up the
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, LMS Solar. So the panels have been delivered. They were delivered this week, which is great and exciting news, finally. That being said, they are beginning the install of 880 panels on the roof. That will take us into the July timeframe for install to be complete. There was a lot of recent commentary on the battery storage system and
Yes. No, I'm sorry. There was a lot of commentary because that was. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
do you have a comment?
No, because I remember the conversation about the battery storage, about the factory that needed to be built to provide said batteries, but go ahead.
Yes, the battery storage unit is now planned for sometime during the fourth quarter is what we were advised. In any event, there is certainly a change to the contract from what the board had previously agreed upon. I have directly met with the supplier, who is Dynamic Grids, the company, as well as their contracted services who are putting the panels on the roof. And I have asked for a new contract to be put in place that the board can review, which will clearly specify exact dates, timelines, milestones, as well as the actual battery units that are going into this container, this storage behind the building. Because what's being discussed is a change in the specifications of that battery unit.
Are they allowed to do that with that existing contract?
The way they're pitching it is it's superior to what was in the contract. I don't know enough about that to evaluate, to opine. But I want it written down very clearly, because I'd like to have that conversation with our fire chief, so everyone's crystal clear as to what's going in this container.
Are we
So
also-
I'm sorry, they provide both the panels and the batteries, so that they'll understand whether or not there's gonna be any issues with the interconnect between what we have versus what was spec versus what we're getting?
No, there's no
Is it-
issues with that.
Okay.
Is the school board leveraging any of the town expertise amongst the community to be able to ensure that if we do write some sort of a new contract, that all loopholes have been identified and closed?
I mean, sure, so it'll be a public document, right? And I would love public opinion, because it's a lithium titanate something, and I don't know what that means. So, more to come. I don't have the contract yet. I have asked for it to be drafted, and hopefully here in the next couple of
So,
weeks, we'll start to see
In
that.
addition to the fire department, are we gonna talk to our insurance in case there's any issues with lithium batteries and their
Yep, absolutely, I think it's a good.
potential for?
Yep, all of that has to be vetted.
Without digging the hole deeper, can I ask you when they decided to switch from condensers to batteries? When was that switch made?
I have no idea.
Because when this project was being pitched to the voters, I asked specifically what the battery life was, and their expert that was there said that they're not batteries, they're condensers,
Yeah, or capacitors.
or capacitors, yeah. So now we're talking batteries again, so that's,
I don't know when.
yeah.
I
Do
can
you,
ask.
do you remember it being discussed at all? Because you would have to be in the loop of that.
No.
I guess the other question then too would be, is there a change in, if there's a 5 to 10 years, what kind of cost are we looking at for disposal and other types of things relative to,
Replacement.
as opposed to what we were originally promised?
Yep, I think I need to figure out what's in this box first.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but
Yeah, because then, I asked him what the shelf life was for the capacitors, and he said 30 years, I believe. And someone that we both know who works in this industry says 8 years. So even if it was, I mean, we're looking at a major cost coming up.
Yep.
So, yeah, maybe find out when the switch was made and who made it. Did they make it with your knowledge? Because that would be interesting.
So capacitor versus
They said it was gonna be capacitors.
capacitor versus battery.
My understanding that the capacitors are still gonna be there. This is just a different battery technology.
That has changed since this project was scoped.
have they been put in use anywhere? Do we know how reliable said batteries are?
No?
Other questions around solar at LMS? Okay.
And I know you guys are trying to get this thing done.
We are. I am now, so there's, as you know, the business administrator is leaving, as well as the superintendent at this point. And I've taken it on by personally meeting with the vendor, the contractor who's doing all the installs. I'm there every morning, right? I saw you in line behind me this morning, right? I'm there every morning looking at this stuff too. I was up on the roof, right? Last week, actually, right? Looking at their work and making sure that we're all in alignment. Had a 45-minute powwow in the garage behind LMS, making sure everyone's in agreement with the milestones and what we're working towards. And I'm really trying to be the continuity behind this, because the taxpayers have now, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're investing a lot of money into this, and we want it done right.
Other updates.
Other update, I'd like to talk to the board briefly and provide an update on contracted services. So, the board has approved for the remainder of the school year, starting a month or two ago, contracted services as authorized to do so by our support staff, all right, the LSSA, to clean a portion of Campbell High School to provide relief to our custodial staff. That, for the first month or so, worked out actually quite well, and was a very reasonable cost. And so the ask by the support staff is if we could also do the same to support LMS, where there's currently, and has been currently, one custodian. So the board did approve that again for the remainder of the year. I'm not sure where that will go into next year, but just so you know, there is contracted services for cleaning CHS and LMS at the moment. And I also, there was a board discussion at our last week's meeting regarding a discussion that's happening within the facilities group about using an outsourced company for grounds. Right, I don't know where that's going to go.
Was that brought by the LSSA?
That was the next step after the board meeting. Whether that has happened or not at this point, I don't know. But that was the next step, is to talk to the support staff, see what their willingness is.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. Did they bring that? They didn't bring that forward as a suggestion. That was more of an.
What was brought to the board is we have staff that are now full-time
Managers levels, right?
managers in mowing fields when that's not their day job.
Got it.
Right, they're having to redeploy their time to keep up with the grounds for sports in the district when we really need them to focus on other things. So, more to come on that.
I know it was before your time, but each school used to have a lead custodian. Dave Ross was at GMS, Sue Air was at LMS, and then went to CHS when it was built, and then a gentleman named Jack took over at LMS. And it was only after a BA was brought in, after Steve Martin retired, that they were brought up to district level, which really, most of us saw no need to be at the district level. And again, it's not you or the board or anything, but these are the decisions that taking these people out, because Dave Ross was the fix-it guy at one of the schools, and Sue was the other one, and they went in between the schools when needed. So maybe the thought of getting them back in the schools where they belong, instead of, riding around in trucks all day.
Sounds good.
I'm sure Dave would like it. He likes getting his hands dirty.
He does. Yeah, and we're very grateful to Dave for all that he does for our district. So,
He's fantastic. I think he's underused right now.
I think he's overused.
He's overworked, but underutilized
Yes,
in
yeah.
what he does best.
As far as his talent goes.
Touche. I'll give you that one.
Other updates, Mr. Cutter.
I think those are, obviously, we're right in the middle of end of year activities. There's a few weeks left of school. Obviously, a lot of things over the next few weeks regarding graduations and various academic award ceremonies and the like. So that's what's keeping us busy at the moment.
What are you,
Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
what are you looking at for a budget surplus? We've asked the last couple of
Oh.
months, and it's,
Thank you.
I don't know. You're now T-minus about 35 days. I would hope we know now.
It was discussed. That was the question I was getting ready to ask.
My apology to the board. You're right. I should have absolutely included that. Give me just a moment to load that up, because I do have those numbers for the board this evening.
But you all haven't, while you're doing that, is the plan at your next meeting that you're going to review potential expenses? Is that the timeline?
Yes, and the board may even make decisions.
It's in that BA report. It's
It
linked.
is in the BA report, but allow me to just walk through the numbers with the board for a moment.
Well, while you look for it, I would like to thank you, or thank the BA,
tab right there.
for pulling out the special ed separately. There's a separate line
Yep.
item. I appreciate that being pulled apart and handled separately.
That was critical for me, right? So let's
We could
just.
discuss the number, but I appreciate the way it's set up.
Let's just recap for a moment, right? And so 2 years ago, which is the budget that we're now in, right? 2 years ago, when we went through the budget process, there was a debate amongst the board about whether the school board at the future time now would be willing to return any underspend specifically in special services accounts. I know we've talked about that in years past, but this board, it was a school board discussion, and the board at the time made the decision that yes, for this budget, we will do that. Right? And so I am ensuring that we are doing that. That number at the moment, it's draft and preliminary, because we still have a month out to go, right? But as reported to the board last week, that number is $572,000.
I had a question about it first.
So could we land somewhere around 500? Yeah, probably, right? And so that is the number that we're thinking at the moment will be returned to taxpayers.
In addition.
In addition to the 497,000 that we committed to, we have to return to the taxpayers anyways as a result of the land falling
Right.
through.
So does that the current number, which is indicated in orange, 572,000 draft, that accounts for the fact that we have an overage in out-of-district tuition, an overage in special ed professional services, and an underage in special ed transportation, correct?
That is
Those are all-
correct. This is largely, the vast majority of this $572,000 is because we have significant amount of pairs that we were not able to fill.
There's 61,000 due to special ed transportation. So when we have, so I just want to highlight back to when we have this conversation every year, and well, we can't possibly touch it. That is almost 2.5 times what I had recommended as a reduction, and I was told we were cutting it too tight. So I just like to highlight the fact that no, it wasn't. So
Again, I would just remind the board that these numbers are draft. There's a month to go, and we're still expecting invoices to
you
come
can
in.
cut it in half, and it's still more than I had suggested.
I'm just
So
saying, like,
just
I
saying.
don't know the pay cycle, right? That's my only point for highlighting that.
Mr. Cutter, can you, and just for everybody's reference, if
Yeah.
you open up the BA report that was shared earlier this week and open up Mr. Totten's projection end of year fiscal year, there's a 1, 2, 3. The fourth tab in is EOY, transfers, encumbrances,
You can
offset
go
of
live.
taxes.
I can
Yep.
if it works.
Oh, there you go. I just wanted a question of, so the things that are listed in teal, those are items that you're going to discuss and potentially vote on for end of year.
Well, the committed fund ones are the
Nice
warrant
boat. Is
articles.
that yours?
Say that again?
The ones in teal, well, maybe, unless I'm reading them differently.
Oh.
I have teal underneath transfers,
How do
committed fund
I-
balance.
Yeah.
Those are warrant
I know.
articles. The
Yeah,
light green one?
The light green, that's what I meant. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was my teal.
So I had, oh, okay. Like, it could just be that different, like, I'm using Excel, if you're using whatever. I actually had a couple questions on some of these as well.
I wanna know whose boat
Oh,
that is.
there we go.
Wow.
Like that. Now we're getting creative here.
No wonder-
Oh, no. Hit the wrong
The
button.
wrong one.
So, so one of the items here is, under transfers, there's a transfer to capital projects fund. Covers unknown but needed change orders. If we don't know what they are, how do we know they're needed?
Which one? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I actually had the same question. There are change orders pending that are known. It's just mislabeled in that row, right? So they are known expenses, and the board will have about an $18,000 shortfall that we will have to cover with end of year encumbrances
How
to
did that
pay
occur?
because of change orders as a result of the work.
Which particular project?
It's the Fund 30 middle school project.
So the one that we already raised another $500,000 to cover,
There's
we're
another-
still short.
There's another 18 grand that we will cover from for end of year spending. Yep.
So when does the bleeding stop on this project? Like, honestly.
Mr. Taylor?
On those change orders,
Yes.
is that based on property not being available and then thus work not able to be done? Then absolutely, I'm 100% behind, yes, that's something we have to pay for. Or is it a mistake that was made in the planning and engineering of the project? Because then honestly, that should really be on,
Their contingency.
right?
Nope. This is a result of, when they're opening walls to run new HVAC equipment, and they have to
Okay.
do fire suppression sealants over more joint, things like that.
So changes that wouldn't have been able to be identified.
Correct.
Without causing damage / disruption to the facility itself at the time it was planned?
Yes.
Okay,
So it's the result of
That's
not-
understandable.
yeah, it's the result of not having a contingency fund built into the original
No.
project. Because those kinds of things, you have a contingency fund.
Correct,
for.
there was no, that's right. So let me take the opportunity to run down end of year. Mr. Totten has done a tremendous job putting this together and would explain it way better than I. Anyways, revenue over expected expenses and under budget, $123,707. So the district has received revenue above and beyond what we had planned for the year. And as a result, that is showing us a positive number in our total year look. In addition to that, there is, expenses under budget. This is a moving number. At the moment, that is planned for $1.2 million. Very clearly, again, though, $497,000 of this is what's already committed for land going back to the taxpayers. That is included in this 1.2.
And the 572 from special ed's
And
included in
then,
that?
yep, we're gonna get to that here momentarily.
Got it.
As the board has been, and as we've shared with the board and as we've been tracking, we are in the red for food service. This is a moving number. This was not included in this current budget. It is included in next year's budget, right? But we have to make that whole. We have to fill that number. That number at the moment is somewhere around $90,000. So
good question on that,
right off
Andrew.
the top. Yep.
Is there any of line item number 3, revenue over expected expenses, that could be tied to food services, things of that nature, that some of that should be carved out to offset the deficit? In other words, like, was there additional funding for free reduced lunch revenue that we weren't expecting? Is there any way to be able to tie any of that together?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But I can ask. I can ask to confirm that. As mentioned just a moment ago, so we are covering the remaining change order work for LMS, $19,000. So taking that into consideration, we're at really $1,035,000. The voters have taken some, have approved at town meeting some transfers to our capital reserve fund accounts in March. And so these are reflective of what the voters have confirmed that we should do. So we're transferring employee benefits, non-capital reserve fund. That is $178,000. We're transferring, or plan to transfer $125,000 to our building maintenance fund, and another $125,000 to our capital improvements fund. Now, if you're interested in the balances in those funds, that is another tab in Mr. Totten's reports, and we can talk about that if there's interest. So once we get through that, our remaining funds are $785,000. From there, again, at the moment, it's $572,000 where we land, probably somewhere in the 500K range, moving. But taking 572 as we've known as of last week, and putting that aside to return to the taxpayers, that leaves $213,951 as an amount for potential encumbrances. The amount expensed for Fund 30 elementary projects.
What specifically is that tied to? Because when I click the link, it just says Fund 30 transfer. There's no real detail as to what that is.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't know what this one is quite yet.
And it also says could utilize capital improvement
So
expenditure
if you
trust
could-
fund.
yeah, if you could help us understand what that is, that'd be great.
So if I click more info, I'm just
It
curious.
just has a line in it.
Capital reserve currently has 470, and you're gonna add 125 to it, so you're gonna have, about 600K in that fund.
Okay, so what Mr. Totten's highlighting here is that if you look at elementary, there are additional expenses for Barker Architects from July 23 to January 24, and some other, sorry, it's really small here, but there's some other elementary costs here. There's consulting work.
That's total amount? Where's the 41,000?
Is it made up of anything
I
that's,
think it's made up of things that are in elementary. But,
Seems to be a lot of consulting work there.
but again, this is going back a year,
Yeah.
right? After the March vote, all of that work has stopped.
that's what it is.
What is that?
40, I summed
Did you
it.
sum up the elementary ones?
$40,371.
Yeah, so that's what it is. It's covering the costs here.
Well, I hope we stop until we get a plan, because good lord, it's been a lot to do nothing.
And then everything else on here is, I heard-
Everything else on here is potential encumbrances. The board hasn't really
So,
talked a whole lot
I
about a lot
thought
of
we
these, so.
rekeyed the 3 schools within,
Couple
I-
years ago.
huh?
We recreate two
Yeah,
of the
all-
schools.
But I thought there was a warrant article to rekey all 3, so if we didn't rekey all 3, what
I
happened?
thought it was 3 too. I think you're
Because
right.
the concern at
They
the
said they
time
pulled
was,
cores out for-
the concern at the time was, we
security.
didn't know who in town had keys and who didn't. So we were redoing all 3 schools. So if we didn't do a school at the time, then we should look, what happened to the money? Why wasn't it done then when we did the other 2?
I think that was an encumbrance. I don't know that it was a separate warrant
I
article.
would take a look at it, because I remember being on the safety and security thing where we put forward a pretty sizable security improvements warrant article that passed.
Okay, we can ask that
So I
question.
would be curious as to why it wasn't done.
GMS wasn't done, but that being said, there are a number, we were advised last week, there are a number of keys in that building that were updated over the years.
Mhm.
So it's not every door, it's some of the doors. Yeah. You know, also what the SAU and the superintendent's proposing here is additional blue lights. Again, no board decisions,
So we looked
additional
at
radios.
The Safe Schools grants, because I know, I saw Litchfield on it for some items, but did we actually pursue some of these? Because there's an expansion, there's a couple of these I would think would fall under those opportunities for applying for the Safe Schools grants and potentially removing it from the burden of taxpayers if grant money is available.
Yeah, another great question. That's, again,
Well, my
something that we'll
concern
talk
is-
about at our next board meeting.
Perfect. Yeah, because if we're making decisions now without first considering, hey, can we apply for a grant, would be unfortunate.
LMS so bathrooms were discussed at needing some rehab. Some of the partitions and some of the mirrors specifically, so, you know,
Mhm.
tourniquets and.
So is there a reason why those aren't part of the standard budget? Like, those seem like things that the health office should have. So why are they not a part of the operating budget?
Agree.
What is their life expectancy? Is this gonna become a recurring annual expense? So if that's the case, then is this the appropriate place for it? So,
Okay.
Again, Carrie, you know, with respect, the board hasn't talked really about any of this. So
That's fine, but-
where they're coming from, why they're on here,
right, but I don't have an opportunity, you're gonna be voting, we used to see this earlier so we could get these questions in advance of your meetings.
I just
but your
received it
meet-
last week.
But that's not a me thing, that's you're the people who work for you thing. So I would like, this is my only opportunity to have an input before you vote, so
That's
please
not
bear with me.
true. You're
can go
welcome
to
to
the
come
board
at any school board meeting.
Uh-huh,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Or-
one where I'm at a facility.
You're welcome to
meeting.
send the school board an email.
or email.
Yeah, those don't tend to
Can-
get responded to, so
Can
I'm
I,
good.
I want to make a comment on one that I think is, like, to me, a no-brainer, and that's the math program for 5 years, because if you do the math behind that, that's a savings of $45,000 in doing that. Like, if you extrapolate out 85 over 3, and you add on 2 more years, that's another $56,000.
I guess the question is, what did we carry in next year's budget and what happens to that money?
You mean whether it was paid up front?
So
or-
did we, the budget we just approved for next year, is there money for a math program for whatever the year is? And if so, what happens to that? Because we all know it goes to the general fund to be spent somewhere else.
Well, you would still spend the 85,000. You're adding 11.
Alright.
You're taking it from 85 to 96.
Right.
So you're
Okay.
increasing. You would increase that line item.
No,
by
I
this
agree, that
11%.
makes sense. I just wanna make sure that we are not saying, because we've done, not this iteration of the school board, but there have been some in the past, who have said, let's take some end-of-year money, pay for some IT expenses, and then take that money and use it for something else. So long as the money that we are actually allocating for math gets spent for math, and we just need to pay a little premium to save us some money in the long run, cool. But if we're saving money, we're spending money here and reallocating funds there, then that's not so cool.
I think it's budgeted 85,000 for 3 years.
It is in the budget, so what
Okay.
the ask here is the
For the
difference to make it a 5-year.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Is
So is that answer?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Again, yep, that's perfect.
my only thought, and I don't want to belabor this because to your point, you all haven't voted on any of these, and we could talk about things that you may decide not to approve. The only other one that kind of caught my eye was line 26,
Sure.
where it says network all 3 buildings. Like, is that talking about like?
No idea.
I mean, that is
Because
not.
we invested in, I thought we upgraded the networking in the building.
This isn't, I don't think this is Wi-Fi, which we did invest in.
Like even like fiber in buildings, or I mean that is not cheap. And if you're down to 50K left in your encumbrances, it's just I was just curious as to what that was more than
I
anything.
think these are truly all ideas
Right,
at this point.
Okay.
I don't anticipate all of these passing.
right.
We don't even have numbers for some of these.
Well, some of these I would think you could do impact fees on, even.
Some of them had notes
Like
about
radios,
impact fees.
right? And so like the GMS radios is an expansion, is because of an expansion
Or
of service,
Even
right?
the CHS auditorium upgrades, you could probably make a case for. Due to the expansion of the town, we use that more frequently, we need to be able to better provide services within that space. So, because there was money that was pulled out of the impact fees for projects already completed and held to another account, but I don't know that we've adequately explored ways we can use that to address some of the concerns already being discussed. So so in particular, like I was saying, my concern is we should really go after the
Grants
safe
and
schools
impact
grants.
fees and, yep.
Well, exterior speakers at buildings, that's a safe schools kind of issue. Blue lights, safe schools. So rather than, my concern is, I'd hate to see us go to the taxpayer first and leave grant money on the table. Whereas we can, because we've already
Fair
applied for
point.
grant money,
Yep.
because we're on the list for a couple of projects.
I would agree with that.
That is a question we will certainly ask. Yep.
The last thing I have is, like, can you just walk us through kind of the summary there of what when we get down to lines 28 through 33?
Sure. So, estimate ending balance, this total of 28,000 is assuming everything with a dollar amount gets passed. I don't think that's reasonable. So that's just a rough number at this point. 497 again is the elementary, 497,000 is the elementary land being returned to the taxpayers. 572,000 at the moment is the amount estimated of special services underspend. So, that being said, the estimated total, if we take in the balance of 28,000 remaining here, which will change for sure, right? Leaves us with $1,097,000 to be returned to the taxpayers.
And you said that 572 could go down a little bit as well.
The 572 will go down.
Do we also know what the universal screener is? Is that a piece of equipment, or is that a person, is it a contract?
No, it's actually a piece of equipment. It is a system that automates being able to properly identify behavioral issues within children that a lot of other districts have and have found great success in, taking less of the guesswork or less of the analysis behind it out, and using a system and a database behind it that.
So is this becoming an annual thing?
No.
Alright. So then what is the difference between the appropriations revenue and the end of year encumbrances? Because here we have handheld communication radios under warrant and board motions for 42,000, purchase of blue lights for 16,500, and then something similar located on the encumbrance proposal. What's the difference between those two?
I don't know where you're looking for.
So if I look at the first tab, appropriations revenue, line 18, handheld communication radio.
Sorry, Carrie, I don't know where you're looking here. I'm going
Okay.
to.
She's on the first tab. Scroll
So
Revenue tab.
before revenue, there should be another tab,
scroll to your
I can get my
There
mouse
you
to
go.
work.
that
Okay.
one, appropriations and revenue. Line 18, handheld communication radios, 42,000. Line 19, purchase of blue lights, 16,500. says warrant and board motions.
Those were last year.
These were
So
last
we-
year's.
So in addition to those communication radios, we need more radios.
Yeah, that is what is coming up to the board, that in addition to all of the new radios that were previously encumbered and purchased, as well as the blue lights that have been installed in their buildings, there are additional needs in both of those areas.
All right, so then when we missed out on the opportunity then to apply impact fees towards the auditorium updates and upgrades, that's unfortunate. Because that is line number 23. That cost exceeds what's left in the impact fee budget.
This CHS auditorium update upgrades, was the tech panel
Mhm.
that controls the stage and
Right, but
plays
as a
and stuff like
result
that.
of the expansion of the town, you could argue that we need to use that space more.
I think it was due to the results, it was like antiqued.
Yeah, it wasn't an expansion, is what we had was dated.
Right, but we were using it more frequently for town meetings as a result of the size.
I don't think that
Okay.
would qualify.
I'm sure if we got creative, we probably could.
Anyway, so,
Thank you for walking through that.
Yeah,
I think
you're
it's
welcome.
helpful
So-
to see where we are, where we.
the next board meeting, will be on June 5th. That does conflict a bit with some senior night activities at Campbell. The board has made the decision to start that meeting at 5 PM. So all board members can participate at least a portion of the meeting. I have no idea if we'll start in non-public yet with that, and then go into, so I'm not sure. But we'll start at 5, June 5th, and then the next meeting was scheduled for June 19th. June 19th is a federal holiday. That meeting will now be June 26th.
Right, so the only other question I had was with the encumbrances, there's some that are tied to GMS. So while we're still debating the future, whether it's renovation, whether it's replacement, whether it's whatnot, I would caution against investing in curbing and some other
No,
items.
we need the curbing.
The curbing is
Yeah.
bad, and,
It's
it's
a
Safety
sa-
issue.
it's
I
a
need to
safety
take my
issue for
SUV to the
us.
parking lot now.
Yeah.
I can't take the sedan.
And they're not even potholes anymore when you go
It's
into that
not.
second.
It's a safe. That's a
Yeah.
safety thing.
So, but that's,
That-
well,
that
potholes
needs to
aren't
get done.
curbing though, that's paving.
No,
It says
there is a big issue with the
Yeah, but it's not
curbing.
paving listing, it's curbing. I'm thinking
Either way,
curbing.
as long as the parking lot is prioritized. Because it really is, if you try to get there and you know the parking lot's gonna be full, you have to make sure you take like the right car, or else you're gonna bottom out.
But again, that's not
Yeah.
curbing though. That's
It
paving.
says paving and curbing on here.
Must be the need paving.
Perhaps, but again, if I'm saying curbing, I'm thinking sidewalks, I'm thinking sidewalk curbing,
Well-
I'm thinking access points. If I'm going to potentially do a major renovation, I might be changing my traffic patterns, I might need different curb cuts. Perhaps that should be tied into that project. I'm just saying, the way it's,
Town doesn't get
because it
45
says
minutes of questions.
curbing is deteriorating in areas.
bigger.
So when it says curbing is deteriorating in areas, that to me is sidewalk curbing and something that
I-
should be considered as part of a bigger project.
That's fine, Carrie.
I think the
Still
only
need the
one.
paving.
Carrie, even if something is decided on GMS, you think it's gonna be done next year?
It does,
So if this
again,
is a safety issue, it's a safety issue.
then perhaps we need to make sure that when the people who don't go to GMS all the time understand the exact need, because otherwise you look, why are we throwing money at a building we're still deciding in the next year or two what to do with? I'm just saying that when you start this kind of thing, clarity is important.
5K on curbing doesn't bother me as much because of the safety piece of it. 25K on a new intercom system, I think, is a different conversation. Like
So,
that.
yeah, I'm just highlighting GMS and the investments that are proposed.
That's tough, cause it's, you really
But then if we
can't
don't
hear
invest
the-
in GMS, everybody's gonna say it was a conspiracy, that we didn't invest in GMS to make it look like garbage to get a new one.
It's a
So,
double-edged sword.
can we go back to special ed for a second, please?
Mr. Taylor.
Ship of sales.
So, if at all possible, can we get a breakdown of how much of that underspend was based on staffing? Because obviously that should get returned to the taxpayers this year. But going into next year, I continue to get mixed signals about special ed. So in the fall, the bell was being rung that, well, looks like we're gonna get some families in, it's gonna destroy it, we cut it too close, and then all of a sudden, now there's extra in there. Now, if you come back to me and say, just for simple numbers, 500,000 of the 525,000 is based on lack of ability to staff what was budgeted, that's a very different story than if you tell me that 200 of the 575 is based on that. And then, I still go back to if there is that big of a concern that people coming into the district can completely decimate that budget and put the entire budget negative, yet I keep seeing year after year, there's opportunities to go put some money into the special ed fund, and it's not. So I would want to see that if there is going to be that, ringing the bell, danger, we have big problems, I at least want to see that there is some sort of movement towards building up that fund so that if something like that does happen.
That would be a warrant article.
Right. But like over the last couple of years, we have not, we've talked about special ed, Every time somebody touches that budget, people freak out about it. But I don't see anybody putting it into the rainy day fund to say, okay, so we're gonna try to budget appropriately, but we also have to protect ourselves. And I don't see the protection.
You can see, Mr. Taylor, on the expenses tab, under budget, it does have LSSA, paramonitors. It includes custodial and grounds, but that number is 700K. So so I'm assuming special education is a portion of that, right? Because it's taking custodial and grounds.
Okay.
LSSA is
Okay,
going to
gotcha.
have special education pairs in there, but it's also going to have, custodians in there as well.
Okay.
So that overall number right now is 700K according to this.
Okay.
I will ask the question, get
And that's fine. And I'm just helping you arm me with, if you want me to not cut special ed as much, show me how that's broken down, because if it's mainly staffing that is just not filled, that's a completely
certain
different
we can
mindset
provide
that I'll
that.
have.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mr.
One
Chair.
other comment here, just because we're talking about trust funds and balances, this is in the business administrator's report as well, so you have it, right? But the reserve and trust fund balances account, or tab, will tell you what the running balance is in these particular accounts. As mentioned, the voters in March have approved 3 transfers to 3 of these accounts, so that will take place in likely the July timeframe.
These are their current balances.
These are the current balances as of April end.
Yeah, so I misspoke earlier because I saw somewhere that we had a balance of 400K under appropriations and revenue. Oh, I was looking at appropriations. Well, it says the capital reserve fund has 470K in it. That's in the appropriations and revenue tab. But then is that combining?
Is it combining them?
Yeah, it must be combining the two.
That's about, yeah. Well,
I'm not sure what it's combining, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the 3 capital reserves is 478.
Okay. That lines up. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on end of year expenses, the BA report, any of those topics we've been discussing? Any additional items that we haven't talked about yet for Mr. Cutter?
What he didn't mention was there's been a lot of shows at the school lately. Choirs and plays and things like that, and having attended quite a few of them, I'd just like to say that they're doing a fantastic job with these kids over there, the arts, and Mr. Lamy in particular, just fantastic. I mean, if you could bottle that guy, that would be just awesome.
I came here from the LMS show.
Oh, did you?
I only got to see the 5th and 6th grade choir, but there's a full house at Campbell with band and choir performing tonight, so I'm sure it ended as well as it started.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Cutter this evening?
Answering Brian's question earlier, Ms. Kleiner said that she believes that the 320, or it might have been Scott's question, I'm sorry. The 320 looks like a mistake in the finance spreadsheet.
Okay.
So she's gonna check them all and get back to us. Okay?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nice catch.
All right,
Yes.
moving to member input, new business. Couple of committees, school facilities committee.
Met
Douglas?
last night. So it's a good turnout crowd. It's a good sized group of people with a variety of different backgrounds, which is awesome. Currently working through working through some of the, not quite bylaws, but the guidelines for operation.
Governance.
Kind of, because like they're creating the intent is to create is currently being blessed by, I believe, the school board, the citizen co-chair. But what exactly that looks like is still being hashed out, which I think is a pretty neat idea. In addition to having the school board chair, also having a citizen non-board person to provide an extra, to highlight the transparency or the intent of transparency on that committee. There's that, they're looking at putting out a survey that's currently in development to try to understand the outcome of the vote. Why did people vote yes or no? What do we understand? What options are people willing to consider? So to start trying to figure out, well, my hope would be, rather than spending a ton of money for a project that isn't what the voters want, to actually narrow down to like, what are we willing to consider? So getting a better idea and feel of the community at large relative to that. How to better communicate within the community. Because it was noted last night that unless you're a member of the school in some form, you're not getting the school communications. So how is there better communication within the community?
Mailers were discussed, I heard.
Yeah, where's that? I mean, I also lamented the Len, I miss your newspaper. Like the HLN was an opportunity for a lot of people in the past, so how do we replace that for people who don't use Facebook or other digital means of communicating? As well as there's going to be they're gonna have a consultant walk through GMS to have a better to look more in depth at some of the concerns that Mr. O'Blin has had about GMS, what can be fixed, how can it be fixed, and issue his view and findings. So it's quiet, but there's a lot going on. So it will still be continuing through the summer.
I mean, and one of the things that is coming out of facilities, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, you.
one of the things that was coming out of facilities as well, was the ask to continue to engage Mr. Barker, right? Who has been kind of the architect that the school has used, just given his knowledge and historical knowledge there with the district and the buildings and whatever. But that is an expense, right? And so when we say, you know, we still have expenses in Fund 30, that is an expense, and it's an expense directly coming at this time coming from facilities.
Mr. Leary, I know you're part of that group. Mr. Burke, I saw you attended the meeting last night. I don't know if either of you had anything else to add for school facilities.
No, I wasn't there last night, so I won't comment. I was at my granddaughter's softball game, so,
That's right.
Congrats.
for LMS, yep.
That's awesome.
Brian?
No,
I just want to say, I think I'll echo one thing Ms. Douglas said, and I've had several community members comment to me about this, and I think it might have been Gail Behringer posted something on WhatsApp about it. I think I've watched, the first two meetings, I haven't finished the last night's meeting yet, but I think to your point of the makeup of that group, the background, you have people from the trades, you have people that have been in town for generations, you have people that have moved into town very recently.
People who are involved with the CHS project,
Yeah.
so they're bringing their expertise and knowledge.
I have the common theme.
Town hall construction.
That's right.
The
Awesome.
common theme has been, it's a large group, but you have the right people in the room. The challenge is like corralling that, and the governance is going to be really important to that. But you've got the right backgrounds in the room, that whatever winds up coming out of this recommendation to the school board from this committee, hopefully has the full support of that, or hopefully has the support of that group, and then it's going to be able to sell that into the community, because I think you've got the right people with the right backgrounds, with the right connections in town to make something happen. So I think that's a big first step for that group, I think. All right, capital improvement planning.
well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but just a few notes. They reviewed the bylaws. They also took a look as far as the plan for 24 to 29, as far as, taking a look at all the different projects that are listed. There was conversation, or there will be, as far as for the police department vehicle replacement, also town hall upgrades, library improvements, school district projects. A couple of things Mrs. Kleiner pointed out that as of right now, they've already invested about $8,000 in plumbing and talent.
8 or 80?
8,000.
8.
There's also concern about the playground at Talent, where different portions, I guess, continue breaking. So just a need to take a look as far as.
Breaking or vandalism?
I don't think it's vandalism.
Because didn't the slide have to get shut down for a period of time?
I
because
think it was
somebody?
because something broke. I don't think it was vandalism either. But
Oh, okay.
Some of the kids can get a little rough over there with the equipment.
There was a
I don't think it's
Slider thing has
intentionally
been
trying to
broken
break
for
stuff.
10 years at
It's always
least.
been broken.
But we also have an
Does that
expendable
ever
trust
work?
fund for that now, so.
But it's
we can
also,
approve that voters.
was
down
put
the
in
slide
by
again, new
volunteers,
grandkids.
what, 20 years ago, more and
I
more?
could go on that side.
But thank you to the people, because I know you're still in town, who did all that work, because a lot of children in town have enjoyed it. But the reality is, it's aging equipment, so.
And I don't know how far, because again, I wasn't there, so I don't know how far they've gotten as far as, the police station, because they mentioned something here as far as design cost. So is that already like in the works right now, Bob?
It's just being in the preliminary
There was a
discussions.
discussion
I
last
have
year
not
about-
heard anything formal yet.
Last year, there was discussion about using impact fees associated with the police department to do that investigation. Because you really can't move forward without the investigation, and what better way to fund it than the impact fees associated with the new development. So hopefully they're still going that way?
And just
would be in favor.
one other thing, Mr. Croto was, nominated as the chair again, and
Congrats.
Mr. Plansky is the vice chair.
Nice.
All right, any other member input, new business this evening? Seeing none, I will reopen public input. Seeing no one took me up on my offer to join us, I will close public input and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Motion by Ms. Douglas, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries 9-0-0. Our next meeting is on Thursday, June 27th. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, everyone. Hope to see you at the parade on Monday.